Hi, everyone. This is the Leadership with Heart podcast, and this is Heather Younger, your host. Employee experience is powered by emotions. Managers and or leaders within organizations get to choose which emotions they unleash from within the people they lead. Leaders, meaning supervisors or above in an organization, drive much of the positive or negative emotions by their actions or inactions, their words, or what they fail to say. When a manager chooses their words and their actions carefully, they exhibit great emotional intelligence. These managers are often thought of as leaders who care, or as I like to call them, leaders with heart. This special brand of leader drives engagement and loyalty simply by being themselves. Are these leaders perfect? Absolutely not. It is in their awareness and sharing of some of their imperfections that we realize their brilliance. In this podcast, I ask you to see yourself in the stories my guests tell about times when they were not the best versions of themselves, but how they used their hearts to guide them to a place of deeper connection with their teams and heightened leadership prowess. Enjoy. Hello, everybody. This is Heather with the Leadership with Heart podcast, and today I am thrilled to speak with LaToya Lyn. I met her, as you all know, that either people refer guests to the show because they've listened in and they think that they know of some other great, caring leaders who lead with heart. Or there's me who just is kind of out there. I would hate to say stalking, but I'm looking to find the next best people to the leaders that I can bring on the show. And I saw a story that was posted on LinkedIn by LaToya related to John Lewis, who just passed recently. And so I just loved her post. And I was like, oh gosh, just the way what she said about it. I'm like, she's got to be on the show. I have to have her on. So welcome, LaToya.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for stalking me. And also paying attention to that post. Really appreciate it. Very excited to be here and to be chatting with you.
Where are you right now anyway in your leadership journey? We'll come back to that post as well.
Yeah. So, right now my leadership journey, I am in transitioning to a new opportunity where I'll be leading a larger team, which I'm thrilled to be doing. I have had a variety of different leadership opportunities. I can think back to my first one. I was 21 years old and I had 11 direct reports.
Oh,
I don't know whose idea that was, but it went on for 7 years. So I guess there is something, in how, I have been blessed with the gift to bring people together and bring out their best selves and their fullest potential in a very authentic way. And also, be a student and learn from them. So it's been just a great journey. And I'm really looking forward to my next chapter.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay, so let's go back to the post and the post that you did on John Lewis. So tell them a little bit about, maybe you should just say, for those who don't know who John Lewis is, and then introducing how you got to know him.
Yeah. So I honestly, every now and then I think of the universe being an intervention. Some of us will call it divine intervention, but John Lewis is, it's about 2:28 in New York City. And right now we are watching they're broadcasting John Lewis's funeral services. And all of the presidents, I have spoken and he's just been such an amazing figure in everybody's life from a political and civil rights standpoint. John Lewis is pretty much best known as Martin Luther King's right-hand partner. His steady hand kind of kept his heart to the ground and really fought against adversities for people within the South. Well known for being one of the freedom riders in Selma, Alabama, and riding that bus and crossing that bridge to freedom to protest for people of color and Black people especially that were being oppressed, segregated, and really just the height of the Jim Crow era. And he's been a congressman and a part of our American Constitution for many years, have written lots of legislation and fought for everyone's rights. And he's just a divine human being.
And so in that post, you met him, right?
So I had a chance to meet him, and I was asked to do a keynote a few years ago at a private college in New Jersey. And part of the keynote was that we had the opportunity to meet Congressman John Lewis, and he was supposed to kind of give us some encouragement, kind of get us, juiced up, right? Which was great because I think he's a very lively, very powerful and driven speaker. And we were all there, and then something told me to just go up to him. So I went up to him, and he looked at me, and very polite, how are you? What's your name? Da, da, da. And I told him all the things. And then, I just said to him, I was like, why is it so hard? Now, what I meant with that was I work in tech. I am typically the only Black woman in an executive leadership space. And I'm always there to kind of help and guide people through. And there's never a lot of help for me. So I just had a moment of like, for whatever reason, I can just say to this man, like, why is this hard? And he looked me in the eye and he grabbed my hand very firmly. And he told me that, don't worry, you're not alone. And I didn't explain that I was in tech and I do this and I have all these levels and accolades, none of that. I just said, why is so hard? And he immediately knew what I was talking about. And immediately told me that the ancestors are guiding you. Don't worry. And that moment was probably one of the most pivotal moments in my life to hear such encouragement from a man who we didn't really know each other, but we knew each other. And it was only like a 5 or 6 minute interaction. It wasn't a very long, like I went to dinner with him, but it was such a moving moment where he pulled me in and I thanked him. And then when he passed away a couple of weeks ago, it reset my purpose of everything that's happening in the world with violence of Black people, and regulations and the movement around the Black Lives Matters and things and police reform and all those different things. I felt for me that I am in a position to be able to move forward knowing that John Lewis is over all of us. He is all of our ancestors, Black, white, or indifferent, and he is guiding all of us moving forward. And that's what really ignited me to put that post up and share with my community. I put it on my Instagram and on my Facebook, and I actually kind of hesitated to put it on LinkedIn. I'm like, it's so personal, it's so soppy. I'm usually like 5 different ways to be a better manager, like things like that I'll put up, about like careers and about, people's lives and things like that. But for whatever reason, I was just so grounded to share my story. And it was just a very, maybe 200 less character, post. But that was the post in itself in a nutshell.
And I'll make sure to put that. You'll see that in the show notes. Make sure there's a link there for everybody who's going to be looking at that. But I thank you for sharing that. It's just provides such rich texture, and also the example that he showed is so much of what I talk about on this Leadership with Heart podcast, because he demonstrated so much heart and care and concern and empathy and the list goes on. Literally, he is just the person. His face should be on the front of my book. This new book called The Art of Carrying Leadership, and it's because of that. One of the words that you talked about, which is that he didn't know you, but he knew you, or that that he brought you in. That he knew the right words, and he didn't have the context, but he just knew intuitively. Those are some of the things that we look for in our leaders. And so I'm curious to know, for those who you lead, how would they define or describe your leadership style?
Crazy in a good way. I have so much respect for I call them my colleagues, the people that report into me. And I use that word intentionally because they are my colleagues. They are my partners. And, my role as their leader is really to inspire them and move things out of the way. So how they describe my leadership style is open, flexible, uplifting, and there is a sense and a need to move with urgency. And so I'm like I am your typical startup person. Like, there's no denying that. There's no other way. Like, I am a startup person. So you move very quickly, you go, but is it thoughtful? I will always push back to make sure that it's thoughtful. And not thoughtful as far as the end goal, but was it thoughtful 360. Was it thoughtful for you? Was it thoughtful for the people that are going to be receiving this? Is it thoughtful for in the long term? And that is where I anchor myself on as a leader. And that's the most important quality, I think, that my team has shared with me. And I think that they will say many things, but those are a few things that they will definitely share about me and my leadership style.
Well, those are some good things for sure. I mean, you do often wonder, like, what do people say behind my back? I've been one of those people, not from an ego perspective, although I have a healthy ego. I wouldn't be where I'm at today if I didn't. But I've gone back to people who say, they'll message me after I leave an organization and say, "Oh, you were like the best. Like you just, you're the best leader, the best manager." Like they would say those things. And I got to the point where I was like, I don't want to just say thank you. Like, I actually feel like I need to learn from this. So what is it specifically? I'd say, like, what was it that made you think I was your best manager? And I would ask people that. And so the things they were never about, you gave me all these great days off. You gave me the raise I want. You know what I mean? You showed me how to do that spreadsheet. It was always like, you just, you really just cared for me. You took the time to make me feel important. Like I was a person, not an object. Like I wasn't a number. Like there, some of these words they would say. And so I continued to kind of just walk in that journey. And over time, I was like, we need to have more people like that. Not like me, oh, I'm just so great, but like more leaders that exhibit those behaviors. So I was like, well, that's why it's this podcast. I want to talk to people who kind of naturally exhibit these behaviors, who might even think that they're kind of simple or that they are just natural or it's who I am. And oftentimes people on the show will say that, but oftentimes they often say, I didn't start there and I wasn't that person. And so the message is, how much have I grown? How much can I grow? And the people who are listening, I may not naturally possess that skill, or that behavior, right? It's not natural for me. But as I hear this person or that person, it wasn't for him or her either. It wasn't for them, right? And so now maybe it could be for me. And that's what I love about this process of talking things through, because people could see themselves in your journey of improvement and change and enlightenment. So it's pretty cool.
I think this, a couple of things come up. I think for me, it's really like when people ask me, like, what makes you a good leader, right? Or what makes anyone a good leader? And it's a $1 billion industry, right? Leadership training and all those things. But I always give the advice of really get aligned with your own values. What's important to me is that I am high integrity. I have gone through so much in my life as far as oppressions and traumas and having to kind of think myself on the paper bags on a regular basis, that I act with a sense of urgency naturally because time is limited. And I also, the third thing that's really important is respect for my life. Because I have respect for my life, I will automatically have respect for your life. And it doesn't give this divine or perfect image of what a good manager is. But I feel if you anchor yourself on those things and when I think about integrity, it's the well-intentioned. It's not the mistakes. It's the intention. Mm-hmm. Because most people nowadays, like we don't work in an industry or a climate where, you're the manager and then you have 5 more skills than your direct report who has less skills. No, we don't work in that. We work in a model where direct reports know more than you. Yeah. Direct reports actually have subject matter expertise that you don't have, right? And we often try to hammer people down in a more of a theory X, if I can use my IO psychology for a second, a theory X standpoint, where in fact we need to kind of say, hey, wait a minute, you do know more than me. So then what I need to do is really work on my character and how I approach things to be able to really get the most out of people. And that's why people need to really check in with themselves first as leaders to then say, how can I really lead a team effectively?
I love that. And that organizational psychologist kind of look at things and I think it's critical. So I think I naturally, I think I have a law degree, so I have this JD on the end of my name, right? But in the end, I don't practice law, and I probably would have been having the degree that you had. I probably would be looking at organizational psychology because it's the work I do now. So much of the work I do now is in that space, and I'm teaching it, and it's just like, how did that happen, right? How did that happen? I ended up there, but it was meant. My journey was kind of filled with adversity, and it was meant to be where it's supposed to be, and I'm the voice I'm supposed to be, and so it's excited to know that journey's there, but.
Exactly.
It fills me up just to listen to the things that you're saying and just to hear the power behind the words you say, that's backed up by your experience and your journey. And I think people need to understand that journey that's filled with all those bumps and the hills and the valleys and all those things. That is the thing that provides us the power and the fuel to be more compassionate leaders, to be the leaders and show up in the way that we need to for those who are looking to us for deep guidance. And this is not, I liken things often to parent child because I have 4 children. So I see how much there's so many overlaps and they teach me and they lead me and oh my gosh. And so I liken it this way, but I don't want it to be like, oh, I'm so much important. So I'm kind of like your parent. It's the idea of, when the way you care for and nurture those that you bring into the world, that you adopt into the world, whatever it is, right? And that same thing that when you're in the workplace, that people's desire to have connection and care and concern does not leave when they go through that door. Yep. They want that same level. Surprise, leaders in the world, right? So I think that's the key to know. And I love again, you talk with that, and I can hear that all of that journey empowers and informs how you show up for those people.
Totally. I mean, I think being a leader is a privilege. I think that it is not easy work. I think it is hard work. And our tendency sometimes as human beings is to fight or flight, right? And sometimes the fight when you're leading someone and it's very difficult, and you have an initiative, you're not quite sure what the goals are, you're trying to figure it out for your team and for your organization, the tendency is to hammer down, right? And look, I'm gonna set them straight, steer the child, spare the rod type vibe. And I think that, inadvertently we create more separation, less productivity because of that. Something that you said that I thought about and back in, and I will not reveal my age because I'll just tell you the moisturizer that I use. But another that I had before this to pay my way through grad school, I worked with kids. And I never trust anyone that said they don't like children. And I'm going to tell you why. Because kids from the ages of whatever, okay, and I spent many years working with children, but for this, working with children in particular, like maybe within the 5 or 6 realm, they don't care about your status, how much money you make, your title, who you know, why you know them. They want to know, are you genuine? Are you real? And I got my best training working with kids because I had to earn their trust very quickly. And I couldn't do it with any fanfare. It had to be from my heart. And so, because they can really, that is a natural psychological and biological survival tactic. It's like, is this person safe or not? And if you're not safe, they will take your eyeballs out.
That is so true.
But, and that in itself, I feel like really had groomed me to be the leader I am today because I had to really listen with my heart. I don't know any other way.
That's just, wow. Just that alone is so profound. It's so true. And kids don't have the filter that we place on everything, and they don't have the political stance, and they don't have, they just want to live in the truth. They want to tell you the truth. I remember try on some pants, probably, so it would have been about 3 years ago with my 13-year-old, he's I didn't want him to be outside because I didn't want somebody to take him because I'm all like hyper mom that way. So I put him in. He's in the room, but he's turned around so he can't see me getting changed. So I get into these jeans, and he goes, "No, mom." And so no. So if you tell me no, he was my person because he's a person who's literally has no filters. He's like, no. I got to one pair of something, and he's like, yeah, that's doable. So I got those because he's like, it's doable. And that same kid is also a kid who told me recently, I was just doing a lot of volunteering in the classroom and doing this stuff with these moms who are stay-at-home moms. And he's like, Mom, what are you doing? You aren't a stay-at-home mom. You have a business. So why are you acting like you're stay-at-home? Why are you, what he was saying by that is you were overstressing yourself to go to these events and chaperone and do all these things. And in the end, you are a businesswoman. So why you can do a little, but you trying to straddle isn't serving anybody. And and this is again, the 13-year-old who told me maybe like a year ago, this thing. He was 12 at that time. I am led by them all the time. They give me such amazing advice.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, stop straddling, like be who you are and stop it, and stop trying to be this and fit into all these different pegs and things. So yeah, it's interesting how they do that for us. They really do teach us so much.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to know where your drive to lead comes from. Like, what is it why do you lead? Why do you choose to lead?
Why do I choose to lead? I feel like it was chosen for me. If I can be honest, I think that I just was born and then I just no. It's I think I'm going to switch it a little bit. Not choose, but what did I learn? And then maybe choice will come into it a little bit. Yeah, both of my family's from Jamaica, immigrants from Jamaica, and both of my maternal and paternal grandmothers, I think my grandfathers on both sides were able to, but they were illiterate. They couldn't read or write. And, during that time in Jamaica, classism was a big thing. And because you didn't have education, you were only, resorted to certain kind of jobs as domestic workers, right? And so they clean houses, wash clothes, cook, take care of the kids, that kind of stuff. And I remember as a kid going to Jamaica and seeing my grandmothers operate, and these women ran households end to end. They ran the men around them, the kids, and they worked, and they came back and still ran everything. So I grew up in a very matriarchal setting, like women are leaders. It is, and then when I came to work and when I got older, college you really pay attention to anything, but when you really get to work, right, your first job, I'm noticing that women don't really speak, and I'm like, why are you not this is ridiculous. Like,
start talking.
Why are you not saying anything? Because I was just raised to kind of see that. So I think I was placed in leadership roles because people listened to me. And I think not because I had like a smarter thing to say, because I actually opened my mouth and said stuff regularly. And I never paid attention to it, never crossed my mind that people would not want me to do that, or that wasn't invited or unheard of. Like it's just when it only when it was overt, and then it was a fight. So like, what are you talking about? I can't, I remember I was supposed to be in a meeting and they kept taking me off the invite. And this is a good leadership. This is why I choose to lead. And they know I need to be in that meeting. I know I need to be in that meeting. So you know what I started to do, Heather? I just showed up. I just started going to a meeting and waited for them to tell me that I didn't need to be there. And they didn't. I called their bluff. They did not say, "Oh, LaToya, I don't think this meeting is for you." I got, because I'm friends with everybody, the assistants and all the people there. So I found out the information. I joined the meeting. I'm there, and I'm actually speaking and sharing what they need to hear. And so when you ask me that question, like, oh, how did you choose to lead? I think I just don't know any better.
Oh gosh. Well, I love it. I think that's the first I've heard of that, by the way. That's the first, like, out of all I've had almost 100 interviews, and that's the first I've heard, like, I don't know any better. And I think that's great. It's revealing. Because when we think about, like, I'm very fascinated in this area. The work I do with my organization, the consulting side, is so much focused on helping organizations create a culture of listening. And so then a part of that idea of listening is this idea of an invitation. And I'm telling the organization to kind of create more invitations for people to feel comfortable speaking and to speak the truth and to be honest, right? And then from that truth, we develop actions and changes and things inside the organization. But often people they never receive the invitation, they don't feel invited, and naturally they think they need permission. So I think that's something really interesting that you bring up, is that I just automatically, I never asked for permission, I never waited to be invited. I knew I needed to be included, so I just showed up. And that's powerful. I mean, if more people had that sense of, it's almost, this is not in a bad way, but it's kind of a sense of entitlement. Like this is my starting place is that I will be included.
Heather, I'm a millennial for sure. Like I am,
Yeah.
like I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm totally a millennial.
Yeah.
Sure.
But I mean, I wouldn't even because I don't really like to pigeonhole that way. So I don't want to pigeonhole you that way. I'm just saying.
I'm not a millennial. Forget it.
Exactly. It's your entitlement. It's the entitlement that came from all the women that
Right.
you're raised around, is that you were like, this is what they do. And so I'm coming into it. And so this is what I do. Right. This is what I
Right.
do.
It's a
I'm
culture.
entitled to it. I'm going to do it. And it's just, I love it.
Yeah. And I also don't want to discount the women that have, or people of color or minority groups or anyone who have tried to hold space and been shut down, right?
Absolutely.
There is that other aspect of it that needs to be highlighted. And I'm also not going to tell you that has not happened to me, because it has, and I am not just like, oh, here's this Black woman that just kind of just makes her way through organizations. Yes. And, I think the further I go up in my career, the more oppression I feel around being my natural self, because they're not used to it. And I have a message for them: get used to it, because there's more of us. and I hopefully after this podcast, there'll be many more of us. And then on top of that, I hope after this podcast, your listeners that are, in a different category of privilege will hear this and be like, well, maybe let me ask the question, do you need space? Do you have an idea, person that is not like me? I think there's also that opportunity as well. And that ties into leadership. That is leadership. I am not only the leader for my direct reports, I am the leader for every single woman in the company. I am the leader for every single Black person in the company. I am also leader for any queer person in the company. Like, I am the leader, for anything, because I stand in those shoes. And I think that is also something important, that we all need to define our leadership. And then it goes back to my point around integrity, right? That's my root. That's my essence.
Yeah, these are some good ones. I'm hoping, again, those are listening, just kind of resting into some of this. There's a lot to unpack. Like I'm going to be honest, I could spend a lot of time unpacking both sets of them.
We can go have drinks later.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it'll have to. We'll have to continue on with this, and maybe I either do a second one. I also have LinkedIn lives that I do, and so there'll be some continuations of some LinkedIn live conversations related to some of these things, because it's just worth it sometimes to go deeper, even just on one topic, and for people to be able to ask specific questions. And so look for an invitation on that soon for sure. Okay, so tell us a time where it's obvious that you are just. Powerful, just really well-rounded leader. But tell us about a time when you were not the best and like the most enlightened, the best leader. And what did you do to come out of it? A specific story, if you could.
Definitely. So I was 21, and I had about 10 direct reports, and I worked in the camping industry. So it was like a senior leader, and I had counselors reporting into me. The year before that, they were all peers of mine, most of the counselors. And then the next year, I was their supervisor. I had no training. I had no idea what I was doing. And I was giving the team a lot of directional advice. Do this, do that. Why don't you do it this way? You should do it that way. You didn't think about this, like very directional, because I was so immature immature period, and then immature in my processing around it, right? And what ended up happening was people weren't listening to people. People were tired of the way I was speaking to them. People did not respect what I had to say. They listened, but kind of was like, didn't really gravitate towards me. And what I felt about it was, when I was peers to them, I felt the energy. We were all connected. We were all friends. And then we weren't. I was like the other. And I remember reflecting on that and being like, I didn't do this right. And I didn't do this right is because I allowed the title to lead them and not me to. Like, you should listen to what I'm saying to you because I have this particular position, as opposed to really thoughtfully listening to them as a person. And I think that was such a pivotal moment of my management and leadership career, because the following year, I spent a lot of time up front, first of all, gluing the team together, getting them close to a vision, and then telling them to use me as they need to help them execute the vision. And my section had the highest retention numbers, the highest camper happiness, call it an NPS for campers, something like that.
Yep.
And the organization got what they need because I made that pivotal change. And I always have to remind myself, now I'm going into a new role, I got to remind myself of that story. It's not something that you just kind of just know and learn and is engraved in you. You got to go back and reflect. So I am in a reflection space.
I appreciate that, because it's I'm deep in writing this book on the art of caring leadership, how leading with heart uplifts teams and organizations, and there are, I would say, in my first book and in this book, it's not rocket science. So nothing that I'm presenting is rocket science. I'm presenting it a different way through the stories of the people I interview, but it's making people reflect on how effective they've been in each of those behavioral areas, right, and whether they really are truly expressing care. And so I think anybody at any level, no matter how long they've been leading, can take that time to do that self-reflection again, if they've already done it before, to see how they can kind of sharpen the saw, how they can, improve in that particular area, that even if in the area they thought that was really good, and maybe they're just so good in the area, they just focus on the areas that are lower, right? And so I'm even doing a self-assessment that'll have like a community around it, and coaches and things like that we can maybe call on to help folks to move forward in the areas that are kind of like, the blind spots, the areas that are kind of gaps. And those gaps, they translate in the lives of the employees that we lead. And so those employees feel the gaps. Yep. And it's incumbent upon us as leaders to fill those. Yeah. Right? And so I think that's what's so critical about everything we're talking about, and all the learnings that you have, and in the story that you had, and how you're reflecting, and how you made that pivot. That pivot was you filling a gap. And when you did that, your numbers skyrocketed, right? And so it's that your level of effectiveness as a leader, and your ability to show that true care for them is the thing that made all the difference.
And my confidence went up. I felt empowered because because we judge ourselves how we interact with humans, right? We're very social creatures. So if we feel like we have a negative interaction, then it has an impact on our conscious and our cult and our confidence. And once I fixed that, I had more confidence. And as a leader, you're being watched, right? And it's not what you do, it's how you do it. Mm-hmm. So if I'm presenting myself with more confidence, then all of my team, myself, we can all live through each other. I have a direct report that I work with now. I always tell her she's honestly so quiet. She is, shout out to Amy, I'm just going to call her name out. She's so quiet, and she is probably one of the most smartest individuals that I've ever worked with. One of the most. And I always said, I don't know. What did Amy say?
I love it.
I don't know.
That's great, though. You have no issue. I love it. We just got off another call, and the person was talking about that. Like, how much does a person, eclipse your level of intelligence, and how comfortable you are you to have those people around you? And for the fact that it's like, I don't know. To know you know nothing is like half the battle in life, right? And so once you know that, you can go to other people who do. That's the beauty of leadership. I think
the phrasing right there, just know what it was, that to know something is half the battle in life. That's a good name for a podcast.
There you go. I'm already too busy doing this one, too many other things, right? But
spin-off.
It is a comment that's inside of my book, because I do believe that. A long time ago in law school, they taught me that. Like, I know nothing, and that was that's Socrates, right? I know nothing, and so once you release that point, then it makes you feel more comfortable. It's like, okay, now I can just. So what do you know, and what do you know, and what do you know? And I bring people in all the time, because there's so little I know. I know what I know, and I don't know so much.
Yeah. Right.
So for those who are listening who might be struggling in their leadership or at a crossroads or just need some extra motivation to get through, what might be a couple pearls of wisdom you might leave them with today?
Get in tune with your values and what you believe in. That is the most work. I would say that's probably 80% of the job. Because if you have a clear alignment on your values, then you can fill in those gaps with other people or learn from other people on your team to get there. And then I think another pearl of wisdom someone shared me is there are managers do two things really well. And I said it earlier in the call, they inspire their team and they remove roadblocks. Do those two things really well and ask your team for feedback on how you're doing on those two things. And the last thing is that, are you exercising a management model that was built in the 1950s and 40s? Have you evolved your management skills year over year, team over team, company over company? What has worked and what has not worked for people? Not about the end result, the people. And I'll say one last thing, and this is bring it back to John Lewis. Leaders do not lead. Leaders create space for people to follow them. People can follow you. You have Martin Luther King, John Lewis again. We don't know any of these people. I met them once for a few minutes, but we know these people. We follow their leadership. We follow their principles, their integrity, their values, what's important to them. If you want to be that kind of leader, you have to create an environment for people to follow you.
Love that. Thank you so much. I think about, as you say, create, I often think of as curate. And so I think of the employee experience as a curation process, it's a journey that you can look at as a continuum. You can look at it as having winds and twists, whatever that is. But this idea of curating how they feel along their journey, which is like creating that space. So that they're on their journey with you individually, on their journey with your organization holistically, above organization. But it's worth it, isn't it, to reflect on how have you curated and created that space for them to want to follow you as a leader and your organization as a whole. Something many really good.
Away, maybe years away. I mean, you want to be that leader that they refer to all the time in their career.
For those who are listening, who have just been, you guys all know who listen, when you listen to me, I make a lot of those noises when things are just really resonating, and I do not shy away from it. That's just, I feel it, and you're hearing what I'm feeling. So for those who are listening, if you did find just, amazing nuggets of wisdom and things to help you ponder your leadership from my conversation with LaToya, please do share it. Share it far and wide. I think there's so much richness here. And also don't forget to go to Apple Podcast and do a 5-star review and write something out, because when you do that, it helps to bring this up on the algorithm. Interestingly enough, my show before, I had an interview before speaking to LaToya, and I was speaking with Scott Miller, a white gentleman, and he said, you know what? I have to tell you, you're the first African-American woman who's ever interviewed me. And I've been on like maybe 120 podcasts, and you're the first one. So I think the reason why I say there's some richness here, but there's also some diversity here. So let's remember to try to promote on Apple Podcast and writing the review to make sure that we can get more people listening to this so they can hear some of these diverse conversations, because there's a lot to be learned. So I definitely appreciate this. And LaToya, you've just been amazing. I know we're going to be talking some more and doing some more collaboration for sure.
Thank you so much. Great opportunity. And thank you for those that are listening.
And thanks everybody for joining the Leadership with Heart podcast. Be well.
Thank you for listening to the Leadership with Heart podcast. You can grab the show notes by visiting customerfanatics.com. And don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter.